Welcome to Wisdom for the Present, where we take ancient truth and bring it into clear, modern understanding. This episode uses AI-generated narration based on human-researched and written material.
It is great to be here for this one.
Yeah, so imagine you wake up tomorrow morning, you check your phone, and your bank account is at absolute zero.
Oh, a total nightmare scenario right off the bat.
Right, absolute nightmare. You walk outside, your car is just gone from the driveway. You finally get to the office, and someone else is sitting at your desk.
Wow.
And they just casually tell you that your title, your salary, your entire career have just been permanently stripped away.
Just instant panic. I mean, sheer devastation.
Exactly. But according to this ancient psychological survival manual we're looking at today, you didn't actually lose a single thing.
Which is just a wild concept.
It really is. You didn't lose it. You merely returned it.
Yeah, and it's a staggering premise to open with, honestly. But, I mean, it cuts right to the bone of what we're dealing with today. We are looking at a philosophy that basically demands a total rewrite of how we perceive reality.
A total rewrite. And that is the intense mission for today's deep dive. We are stepping right into the world of ancient Stoic wisdom.
Specifically, we're looking at a really concentrated section of Epictetus' Enchiridion. Chapters 11 through 20, right?
Yeah, chapters 11 through 20. And look, for you, the listener, the goal here isn't to give you some dry academic lecture on Roman history.
Right. Nobody needs that right now.
No, because you are navigating a totally chaotic modern world. I mean, you've got a demanding job, family pressures, a constant barrage of news, and, that lingering anxiety of a really unpredictable economy.
It's exhausting.
It is. So we are going to extract the most potent, actionable nuggets of wisdom from this ancient text, really use it to build armor. Yeah. This is your shortcut to becoming deeply well-informed about a framework that has quite literally rewired how millions of people process adversity.
And it's worth noting, the word Enchiridion literally translates to a handbook or a manual, or even actually a dagger that you keep close at hand.
A dagger. That's intense.
Yeah. It was meant to be carried into the marketplace, into the home, into the incredibly messy reality of everyday human existence. It wasn't meant for a library. And the sections we're dissecting today, they contain some of the most confrontational advice in the entire historical record.
Okay, let's unpack this. Yeah. Because before we can even begin to apply these ancient ideas to a modern Tuesday morning, we really have to grapple with the fundamental, almost violently jarring shift in perspective the author demands from the reader here.
Yeah, he does not pull punches.
Not at all. It starts with completely dismantling the illusion of ownership.
Right. The text lays this out so bluntly, it essentially says we own absolutely nothing. Nothing is ours to keep.
Which goes against everything we're taught, right?
Exactly. The specific instruction he gives is to never say of anything, I have lost it, but instead to say, I have restored it, or, returned it.
Right. And I was trying to map this onto our modern lives to really make it make sense. And the most accurate parallel I could construct is the psychology of driving a rental car.
Oh, I like that. The rental car analogy.
Right. So when you travel, you go to the airport counter, you sign the agreement, and they hand you the keys to this nice SUV. And you drive it for a week.
You're using it, enjoying it.
Exactly. You enjoy the heated seats, you appreciate the cargo space, you might even take a great family road trip in it. But at the end of the week, you drive it back to that airport lot, you hand the keys to the attendant, and you just walk to your terminal.
And crucially, you don't fall to your knees in the return lot weeping in absolute despair because the car is gone.
No. You don't scream, the universe is so unfair. That attendant at the Hertz counter is a malicious thief for taking my vehicle.
Yeah.
You don't do that.
Because you knew from the very first second you turned the ignition that this was a temporary arrangement.
Exactly. You had a lease. It was never yours. So the question that confronts you, the listener, right now is this. What would happen to your baseline anxiety if you viewed your bank account, your career status, your physical health, and even your closest relationships with that exact same rental car mindset?
And that is exactly where the text pushes back against our deepest instincts, because it explicitly includes our families in this.
Which is the hardest part to swallow.
Absolutely. It says, if your estate is taken, it is restored. If your spouse dies, they are restored. If your child dies, they are restored.
It's so heavy.
It is heavy. The author is demanding a profound psychological pivot here. He is arguing that everything we have is just on loan from nature or from the universe. We don't possess these things. We merely borrow them.
Right.
And logically, you cannot lose something you never owned in the first place. When it's taken away, whether by a market crash crash, a tyrannical boss, or by mortality itself. It is simply being returned to the original owner.
It's a total dismantling of entitlement. And the author, Epictetus, he knows we will fight this. The text literally says we will argue back, but it was a bad man who took it.
Right, we obsess over the mechanism of the loss.
Yes. If I lose my job because of a corrupt corporate merger, I am furious at the executives. If a thief steals my laptop, I am furious at the thief.
We want someone to blame. But the text immediately counters that obsession. It asks, what is it to you by whose hands he who gave it has demanded it again?
Wow. So the mechanism doesn't matter.
The mechanism of the return is entirely irrelevant to your internal state. The core truth is simply that the lease expired. The author actually advises us to treat everything we currently hold the way a traveler treats an inn.
An inn, like a hotel.
Yeah, exactly. You sleep in the bed, you enjoy the warmth of the fire in the lobby, but you don't try to pack the innkeeper's mattress into your luggage when you check out the next morning.
That's a great image. Because if we don't adopt this traveler's mindset, we run into a massive vulnerability. Because if I deeply believe that I own my job title or my reputation or my wealth, and I desperately cling to them, I have essentially handed the keys to my psychological freedom over to anyone who can threaten those things.
Yes, and that brings us directly to the text's definition of slavery and freedom, which is so central to this whole philosophy.
How does he define it?
The author states that if you wish for things to be in your power which are not, you are foolish. More pointedly, whoever has the power to confer or remove whatever you seek or shun that person is your master.
Man, that is the ultimate definition of leverage.
It really is. I mean, think about it. If you require your manager's validation to feel competent, your manager is your master.
Ouch. Yeah.
Right. If you require a specific balance in your retirement account to feel safe, well, then the fluctuating global economy is your master. True freedom in this framework is the systematic removal of the leverage the external world has over your internal tranquility.
You literally achieve this by genuinely ceasing to yearn for things outside your direct control.
Exactly.
So, okay, if we're supposed to move through the world without grasping at things or hoarding them, what does that actually look like in daily practice? Because the author provides these incredibly rich visual metaphors to explain the posture we should take.
Yeah, the metaphors are fantastic.
The first one is treating life as a formal banquet.
It's such a brilliant image. The text says, remember that you must behave as at a banquet.
So, picture a massive, opulent Roman dinner party, right?
Yeah.
You are seated at this long table, and a servant is carrying a tray of delicacies down the line. The text instructs, and this is a quote, "Is anything brought round to you? Put out your hand and take a moderate share."
Just a moderate share.
Right. Does it pass by you? Do not stop it. Is it not yet come? Do not yearn and desire toward it, but wait till it reaches you. And the author explicitly applies this exact banquet etiquette to your career, your wealth, your family.
Because the banquet metaphor teaches the posture of graceful participation. I mean, think about the desperation of ambition. That is the guest lunging across the table, knocking over wine glasses, just to grab a dish before it reaches them.
Oh, we all know that person at work.
We do. And think about greed. That is the guest who takes the platter, piles their own plate incredibly high, and then refuses to pass it down to their neighbor.
Yeah, totally.
And then think about resentment. That is the guest who throws a silent tantrum because the best cut of meat went to the person sitting opposite them.
Right. So the philosophy here just says, sit back, be engaged in the conversation. If a promotion comes your way, take a moderate share. If it goes to someone else, do not obsess over it. I see so much dignity in that. It is the absolute antithesis of the anxious, hyper-competitive, grasping way we usually live our lives today.
What's fascinating here is how this pairs with the second metaphor he uses, which is life as a stage. The text instructs the reader to remember they are an actor in a drama, and the casting director is the author of the universe.
Yeah, he says, if he wants you to act a poor man, a cripple, a ruler, or a private citizen, see that you act your part with good grace.
Exactly. This completely separates the assignment of your role from the execution of your role. I mean, you do not choose your starting conditions, you don't choose your genetics, the era you were born into, or the economic class of your parents.
That's all just the casting.
Right, that's the casting. But your sole business, the only metric of success you should actually care about is acting that given part brilliantly.
Which radically shifts where we expend our energy. I mean, most of us spend our entire lives furious that we weren't given the lead role.
Constantly furious.
We look around the stage, angry that someone else got cast as the wealthy entrepreneur or the beautiful celebrity, while we got cast as the struggling middle manager. We spent all our time complaining to the director, or trying to sneak into a different theater entirely instead of just reading our lines.
It is the ultimate cure for status anxiety. It just eliminates the existential dread of where we are in life and redirects 100% of our cognitive resources to how we behave in that spot.
So true.
If you are cast in the role of someone who just lost their job, well, play it with dignity, resilience, and honor. If you're cast as a CEO, play it with justice, humility, and wisdom. The quality of the performance is entirely within your control.
Okay, but wait. Let me push back slightly. If I am just an actor playing a role, and the things that happen to me are just scenes in a play, why does it hurt so much? I mean, when someone insults me or when I face a financial setback, the pain feels incredibly real. How does this philosophy diagnose the actual source of our emotional pain?
So this might be the most consequential psychological insight in the entire text.
Really?
Yeah. The author argues that the event itself is never the source of the pain. The insult doesn't hurt you. The financial loss doesn't hurt you. It is your opinion of the event that hurts you.
It's the cognitive filter. I was reading the breakdown of this, and modern neuroscience totally backs it up.
Oh, completely.
Because the event itself is just neutral data. If someone hurls an insult at you, what is actually happening in physical reality? They are vibrating their vocal cords, they're pushing air out of their lungs and creating sound waves. Those sound waves travel through the air and hit your eardrum. That's it. That is the physical event.
Precisely. And then your brain's auditory cortex processes those sound waves, your memory banks retrieve the definitions of those words, and your cognitive filter instantly categorizes that data as a threat or a humiliation.
Right.
And only then does your amygdala trigger the physiological response, the flushed face, the elevated heart rate, the actual feeling of anger.
So this ancient text is essentially telling us to interrupt that exact neurological pathway. He says, remember that it is not he who gives abuse or blows who affronts, but the view we take of these things as insulting. The stimulus and the response are separated by this tiny microscopic gap, and in that gap lives our judgment.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it demands absolute, uncompromising responsibility. You cannot control the sound waves coming out of your coworker's mouth, but you are complicit in the feeling of being insulted, because you agreed with the premise that their words had the power to diminish your internal worth.
Wow, that is deeply empowering, but also it's pretty terrifying because you lose the comfort of playing the victim. You can no longer say, she made me furious. You have to look in the mirror and say, she spoke, and I voluntarily generated fury in response.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow. And to understand the sheer intensity of this demand, we really need to look at the historical context here. Because sitting in a climate-controlled room discussing the gap between stimulus and response is one thing. Living it in the first century Roman Empire is another.
Yeah, you read these sections and the language is brutal. The casual mentions of dying children, seized estates, starvation, the terror of not having maintenance. This isn't theoretical at all.
No, not at all.
Epictetus himself, the mind behind these teachings, was born into slavery. His very physical body was legally owned by someone else.
Think about that for a second.
Right. And he endured a physical disability, a crippled leg, which was likely the result of his enslavement. He eventually gained his freedom, became a respected teacher in Rome, and then was abruptly banished by the Emperor Domitian, who just exiled all philosophers. Epictetus had to pack up whatever he could carry and literally flee to Greece to start over.
When you understand that biography, the philosophy suddenly makes perfect sense. I mean, this is not a mindfulness app designed to help you unwind after a stressful Zoom meeting. This is a psychological survival manual forged in blood, exile, and tyranny.
A world defined by extreme unpredictability. A plague could wipe out your family in a week. A shift in political winds could result in your property being confiscated and your life being forfeited. There was zero social safety net. If you fell down the social hierarchy, you faced literal starvation.
So desperate times require impenetrable mental armor. If you lived in an environment where the emperor could literally take your estate or your life on a whim, you simply could not afford to attach your happiness to those external things.
You'd go crazy.
Exactly. If your tranquility was dependent on keeping your wealth, you would live in a state of paralyzing chronic terror. The only way to survive with your sanity intact was to build a fortress entirely within your own mind. To declare that the only thing of true value, the only thing that constituted the good, was your own internal character. Because that is the one thing no tyrant, no thief, and no plague can ever touch.
Which brings us to a crucial transition here. We are not dodging the Emperor Domitian's purges today. You and I and our listener are likely not facing imminent exile or starvation. So how do we translate this extreme first century survival manual into 21st century realities? How does this challenge the modern professional?
Well, we have to map the ancient triggers to the modern triggers because the underlying human operating system hasn't changed at all. The scenery is different, sure, but the software is identical.
Okay, so let's map it.
Let's look at the text's warning against envying those who are eminent in honors or power. In Rome, that meant seeing a newly appointed senator or a victorious general riding by in a chariot. What is the equivalent for our listener today?
It is absolutely the LinkedIn scroll of despair. We all know this exact visceral feeling. You were sitting on your couch on a Tuesday night, feeling perfectly fine about your life. You open an app, and you see that a former classmate, someone who sat behind you in biology and who you always secretly thought you were smarter than, just got a massive promotion to senior vice president. Or they just closed a multi-million-dollar funding round for their startup. They post a glowing update with a crisp, professional headshot.
And instantly your brain generates a wave of envy, inadequacy, and resentment. Your baseline happiness just plummets.
Exactly. My life hasn't changed at all in the last 30 seconds, but suddenly I feel like a total failure.
And the ancient text speaks directly to that modern scrolling experience. It says, take heed not to be bewildered by appearances and to pronounce him happy. It attacks the very foundation of our envy. Why are you envious? Because you perceive the title, the salary, and the status as inherently good things.
You're right.
But if you have adopted the philosophy we've been discussing, that the essence of good consists only in the things within your own power, then the VP promotion is categorized as external. It is neither good nor bad. It is indifferent. Therefore, there is zero logical room for envy.
Man, if I really absorb that, it redefines success completely. Because that VP promotion was granted by a board of directors. The startup funding was granted by venture capitalists. Those things depend on the whims of others. The text says, do not desire to be a general or a senator, but to be free.
That's the translation right there.
The modern translation is, I don't need to envy the new VP because my goal isn't to be a VP. My goal is to be free from the desperate, consuming need to be a VP.
Exactly. Now, let's map another one. The text spends a surprising amount of time discussing the frustration of dealing with the unruly servant or the slave who doesn't come when called.
Yeah, most of us don't have household staff, so at first glance, this seems kind of irrelevant. But if you look at the underlying frustration relying on a system or a person to execute a task and having them fail you, what is the 2026 equivalent?
What do you think it is?
It's the modern inconvenience. It is the IT infrastructure failing. It's the moment you are about to present a crucial remote pitch to a huge client and your Wi-Fi router suddenly drops the connection. Or it's the coworker who accidentally deletes the master spreadsheet you just spent 6 hours optimizing.
Oh, that spreadsheet example is perfect. Think about the physiological response when the Wi-Fi drops or the file deletes, the spike in cortisol, the urge to literally smash the keyboard. The text offers a radical, deeply challenging perspective on this. It says, it is better that your servant should be bad than you unhappy.
So if we translate that to the spreadsheet, it is better for the spreadsheet to be permanently deleted than for your peace of mind to be ruined.
Exactly. We constantly make terrible emotional bargains. We sacrifice our psychological well-being on the altar of efficiency. We scream at the airline gate agent because our flight is delayed. We send a vitriolic, passive-aggressive email to the coworker who messed up the file. We allow a faulty piece of plastic, a router, to dictate our emotional state for an entire afternoon.
It's so true.
The author is essentially asking, why are you giving a piece of hardware or a clumsy coworker the sovereign power to destroy your happiness? It is a terrible trade.
You are trading your freedom for a dropped Zoom call. The absurdity of it becomes so clear when you put it like that. Let's look at one more translation because this one hits on our modern anxiety perfectly. The text talks about the croaking raven. In the ancient world, hearing a raven croak was considered a terrible omen, a superstitious sign that bad luck or tragedy was imminent.
Right. The croaking raven is basically the anticipation of future pain. Today's raven is an ominous push notification news cycle. It is watching the stock market ticker turn red. It is receiving a cryptic one-line email from your boss at 4:30 p.m. on a Friday that just says, we need to talk on Monday.
Oh, that is the ultimate croaking raven. That email ruins your entire weekend. You spend 48 hours catastrophizing, imagining you are definitely getting fired.
But the text challenges us to intercept that anxiety. It instructs us to immediately discriminate and say, nothing is portended to me, for whatsoever happens, it belongs to me to derive advantage therefrom.
So you look at the email from the boss and you say, this omen does not threaten my character. My character is secure. If I get fired on Monday, that is an external event. In fact, getting fired would be an opportunity to practice resilience, courage, and adaptability. Therefore, this ominous email is actually lucky for me because it provides the resistance training I need to strengthen my philosophy.
That is the alchemy of this mindset. You turn every obstacle into fuel.
Right, this is incredibly compelling in theory, but the listener persona for our deep dives, it's practical. They want actionable steps. We don't just want to marvel at the theory. We want to know how to install this software in our brains this week. So let's break down the practical how-to for daily application based on these insights.
Okay, let's formulate practice 1, derived from the frustrations of the unruly servant and the spilled oil. We can call it the cost of peace.
The text gives us a very specific mantra for this. Let it be at hand to say, this is the price paid for peace and tranquility, and nothing is to be had for nothing. So here's the challenge for you, the listener. Sometime in the next 48 hours, something minor is going to go wrong. You are going to spill coffee on your clean shirt. You're going to drop your phone and crack the screen protector. You're going to be stuck behind a driver going 10 miles under the speed limit when you are running late.
And when that happens, you will feel the physical surge of frustration. At that exact moment, you must intercept the emotion and recite the mantra. Out loud if you need to. This is the price paid for peace.
It changes the entire framing. You are reframing the cracked screen not as an unfair tragedy inflicted upon you by gravity, but as a financial transaction. You are literally buying your own emotional regulation. You look at the phone and say, I just paid $30 for a new screen protector to maintain my stoic calm. That's a bargain.
A total bargain.
Right. If you want a tranquil mind, you have to purchase it by intentionally letting go of the minor annoyances. Nothing is to be had for nothing.
Moving to practice 2, we look at chapter 20, which deals with insults and provocations. Let's call this the tactical pause.
I love this one because it leverages the neuroscience we talked about earlier. The text says, try, therefore, in the first place, not to be bewildered by appearances. For if you once gain time and respite, you will more easily command yourself.
Gain time and respite. That is the tactical pause. When someone sends you a furious, unjustified email, your amygdala screams at you to fire back an equally aggressive response immediately. Your fingers are practically hovering over the keyboard.
The practice here is a mandatory enforcement of time. You do not reply instantly, you close the laptop, you take a walk, you force a 24-hour cooling off period.
And in that respite, the neurological cocktail of adrenaline and cortisol dissipates. The prefrontal cortex, the logical reasoning part of your brain, comes back online. And in that calm state, you realize that their insult is just an external sound wave or pixel on a screen, completely powerless to harm your true character. By delaying the reaction, you command yourself.
Now, practice 3 is perhaps the most difficult to calibrate. It comes from the section on comforting others who are grieving. Let's call it empathetic distance.
This one is tricky.
It is. The advice here feels like walking a tightrope. The author says, when you see someone weeping in grief, do not disdain to accommodate yourself to him and, if need be, to groan with him. Take heed, however, not to groan inwardly too. Grown outwardly, but not inwardly.
Think about the psychology of enmeshment versus differentiated support. We all have that friend or family member who is chronically in crisis. When they call you in a panic, the natural, untrained, empathetic response is to absorb their panic. Your heart rate matches theirs. You join them in the vortex of despair.
But the text is warning us that this actually renders us useless to them. If you jump into the quicksand with a drowning person, well, now there are two people drowning.
Exactly.
The practice of empathetic distance means you show up entirely. You listen deeply. You validate their pain. That is the outward groaning. You say, this is incredibly difficult and I am here for you. But inwardly, your core remains untouched. You remind yourself that their external loss is not a true evil. You maintain your philosophical fortress. You stay firmly planted on the solid ground while you reach your hand out to pull them up. You become a calm anchor rather than an amplifying mirror for their panic.
That requires immense emotional discipline. And it brings us to a critical juncture in our deep dive. Because while being a calm anchor sounds noble, we have to confront the obstacles to growth. There are ideas in this text that are deeply uncomfortable, countercultural, and highly resistant to modern sensibilities.
We cannot gloss over the repression pushback. If I am being totally honest, as a modern reader, when I hit chapter 11, I get defensive. The author states, "Has your child died? It is restored." If I apply that literally to my own life, it feels borderline psychopathic.
Right, it feels cold.
It feels utterly devoid of human empathy. Are we truly supposed to be emotionless robots? Modern psychology tells us that suppressing grief leads to trauma. We believe that immense grief is simply the receipt we pay for immense love. To tell a grieving mother that her child is simply restored feels like a violent denial of human connection.
This raises an important question, and your reaction is exactly why modern audiences often bounce off this philosophy initially. We value emotional expression deeply, but we have to look at the function of the advice within its original context.
Right, the survival manual aspect.
Yes. In a society with staggering infant mortality rates, where losing a child was a statistical probability rather than a rare anomaly, falling into bottomless, unrecoverable despair with every loss was a threat to sheer survival. He still had other children to feed, crops to harvest, a life to maintain.
So the goal wasn't to stop loving, but to prevent the kind of grief that destroys the survivor.
Exactly. The concept of restoration is a cognitive tool to process the absolute impermanence of existence. It acknowledges that human life is fragile and temporary. The value for the modern listener isn't to stop crying at funerals, Stoics cried, but the value is to prevent adding the suffering of resentment to the pain of loss.
Resentment, right?
When we lose someone, our grief is often compounded by a narrative of victimization. We feel the universe maliciously robbed us. The text asks us to drop the narrative of theft and accept the painful reality of return.
That makes it much more palatable. It's about stripping away the why me narrative that paralyzes us.
Yeah.
Now let's look at another massive obstacle, the anti-ambition stance.
Ah, yes. Chapters 12 and 13 hit our modern professional drive incredibly hard.
They really do. The text says, and I quote, "It were better to die of hunger, exempt from grief and fear, than to live in affluence with perturbation." And it follows up by saying, "Be content to be thought foolish and dull with regard to externals."
So provocative.
This is a direct assault on modern hustle culture. Our entire economic system is built on the exact opposite of this advice. We're terrified of starving, both literally and socially. We want to be seen as hyper-competent, ambitious, and successful. We curate our personal brands on social media. We optimize our resumes. And here's this ancient voice telling us, actually, it's better to be broke and calm than rich and stressed, and you should be totally fine with people thinking you were an idiot. How does a professional living in a major city trying to pay a mortgage reconcile this?
Well, by recognizing that modern hustle culture is often a trap of affluence with perturbation. Let's look at the psychology of the highly successful, deeply stressed modern executive. They make high six figures or millions. They have the corner office. They have the affluent lifestyle.
But they have golden handcuffs.
Exactly. They have golden handcuffs. They have chronic insomnia. They have stress-induced health issues. They're terrified of the board firing them, terrified of market downturns, terrified of losing their status. They live in constant perturbation, a state of anxious agitation. The text makes a radical objective claim. A simple life, even one near the poverty line, lived with a calm, fearless, and free mind, is a superior human experience to a wealthy life lived in chronic terror.
You don't necessarily have to quit your job and live in the woods, but it forces you to audit your ambition. Are you sacrificing your internal sovereignty for a 10% raise? If you refuse to engage in toxic, backstabbing office politics, your colleagues might think you lack killer instinct. They might think you are foolish and dull. The text challenges you to embrace that label. Your peace of mind is worth infinitely more than their opinion of your ambition.
It requires immense courage to opt out of the anxiety game that everyone else is playing. But this is exactly where we must practice wisdom with discernment. As guides through this material, we cannot blindly endorse every ancient assumption. We have to sift the enduring gold from the time-bound cultural limitations.
The biggest area needing discernment is the tension of fatalism, specifically returning to the actor in a drama metaphor. The author insists that to choose the role belongs to another. You are cast as the poor man, and your only job is to act the poor man well.
Right.
If I look at that through a modern lens, my immediate question is, does this promote societal complacency? If I am born into poverty, do I just say, well, the director cast me as poor, I guess I'll just accept it? If I am facing systemic injustice, do I fight for civil rights, or do I just act the part of the oppressed citizen with good grace?
That's the danger. If we take it as absolute dogma, it can lead to dangerous apathy. In the ancient world, upward mobility was virtually non-existent. A slave was a slave. But today, our entire moral arc relies on the belief that we can and should change unjust systems, cure diseases, and alleviate poverty.
So how do we rescue the wisdom without adopting the fatalism?
We refine the definition of the role. The enduring wisdom here is not about accepting a permanent state of subjugation. It is about radically accepting the starting conditions of any given moment.
Explain that distinction.
You cannot change the family you were born into. You cannot retroactively change the fact that you lost your job yesterday. You cannot change a chronic medical diagnosis you just received. Those are your starting conditions. That is the reality of the board you're playing on.
Okay, I'm with you.
If you spend 90% of your energy raging against the unfairness of those starting conditions, you have no energy left to play the game. The Stoic wisdom says, accept the starting conditions immediately. Own the role of person who just got fired. Once you accept it without resentment, you can dedicate 100% of your energy to excellence, acting it well. And in the modern world, acting it well might mean playing the role of the fierce activist, the relentless entrepreneur, or the reformer who dismantles the unjust system. You accept the present moment completely, which frees you to effectively change the next moment.
That is a phenomenal distinction.
Yeah.
It is the difference between passive resignation and active, clear-eyed engagement. Now let's look at one more area requiring discernment, the concept of extreme asceticism in chapter 15. The text praises figures like Diogenes and Heraclitus. It suggests that if you are able to not just wait for the banquet dishes, but actually forego them entirely, rejecting wealth, rejecting marriage, rejecting children, you will rule with the gods.
The author is pointing to the extreme ascetics. Diogenes famously lived in a ceramic jar in the marketplace and rejected all societal norms and attachments to achieve total invulnerability. The logic being, if you care about absolutely nothing, nothing can ever hurt you.
But is that really the pinnacle of a life well lived? Complete isolation, preemptively rejecting love just to ensure you never feel the pain of a broken heart.
This is where modern psychology and our own deep human intuition demand a correction. Complete emotional isolation might create an impenetrable fortress, but it is a profoundly empty fortress. We know today, through decades of psychological research and human experience, that deep, vulnerable connection is the core of human flourishing.
It makes me think of Brené Brown's extensive work on vulnerability. Her central thesis is that vulnerability, the willingness to be hurt, to love without guarantees, is not a weakness, but the ultimate measure of courage.
Exactly. So the modern discernment is that we must practice non-attachment without slipping into total avoidance. We can love our spouses and our children with fierce, profound depth, while simultaneously accepting the reality that they are mortal and we do not own them.
Right.
We can pursue a meaningful career without tying our identity to the job title. We can sit at the banquet, enjoy the food, converse with the guests, and still be willing to walk away when the dinner is over. We do not need to move into a barrel like Diogenes to find peace. We can engage fully with the world, but with an internal anchor that prevents us from being swept away by it.
Engaging deeply, but holding lightly. That balance is everything. As we bring this incredible exploration to a close, I want to zoom out, because the intensity of these specific Roman chapters can make it feel like an isolated philosophy. But let's look at the comparative insight here.
Yeah, when you step back and look at the broader tapestry of human thought, what is striking is how these exact concepts echo across wildly different cultures and eras. The struggle to maintain internal peace amidst external chaos isn't just a Roman problem, it is the fundamental human condition.
Where else are we seeing these exact blueprints?
Take the concept of the banquet, waiting patiently, practicing non-attachment to desires. Or the tactical pause, gaining time and respite before reacting. These are nearly identical to the core tenets of global mindfulness traditions, particularly Buddhist philosophy.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. In Vipassana meditation, the entire practice is about observing a sensation or an emotion arise and training the mind not to immediately react to it with craving or aversion.
Craving and aversion. That maps perfectly onto chapter 14, where wishing for things outside your power makes you a slave to them.
Yes. The cultural terminology is different, but the mechanical diagnosis of the human mind is identical. Whether you are reading a first-century Stoic slave, sitting with an Eastern meditation master, or working through a modern cognitive behavioral therapy worksheet, the core revelation remains the same.
Which is what?
You are not your fleeting thoughts. You are not the external events that happen to you. You possess a central, sovereign faculty of choice. And your ultimate freedom depends entirely on how rigorously you train that faculty. This isn't just an interesting historical artifact. It is a fundamental insight into the human operating system.
It is the human operating system. We're all running the exact same hardware that Epictetus was running 2,000 years ago. And what we've unpacked today is essentially a massive, highly effective software update.
A software update that takes a lot of processing power to run initially, but once installed, it patches the vulnerabilities that cause us so much unnecessary suffering.
We have covered immense ground in this deep dive. From the rental car mindset of ownership, to surviving the modern LinkedIn scroll, to the neuroscience of the tactical pause, and auditing our own ambitions against the trap of affluence with perturbation.
It's been a journey.
It has. But I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought. Something to carry with you as you close this out and step back into your day. Think about your life right now, in this exact second, the device you are listening to this on, the home or apartment you will sleep in tonight, the people you will text or call or sit across the table from later today, your title at work, the money in your account.
All of it.
If absolutely everything you have right now is merely on loan from the universe and could be asked back at any moment without warning or explanation, how does that change the way you will treat your family, your career, and your possessions when you wake up tomorrow morning?
That's the heart of this section. This is Wisdom for the Present, where understanding leads to clarity, and clarity shapes how we see and live. We'll see you in the next episode.